India's Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, or PMI, reached 55 in May 2026. PMI measures whether factories are growing or slowing down. Anything above 50 means growth. A score of 55 means strong growth. Now compare that with the rest of the world. The United States was below 50, meaning its manufacturing sector was shrinking. The Eurozone was also in contraction. Japan was barely growing. China was still above 50, but its growth was slowing. Among the world's major economies, India is seeing the strongest manufacturing momentum. And it wasn't just factories. Software, banking, healthcare, transport, hospitality, and professional services are all growing at an extraordinary pace. This is what it looks like when an economy begins to scale across sectors, all at the same time. This is what it looks like when 1.5 billion people decide to build. Today, we're covering 11 Indian companies that together tell the story of one of the biggest economic transformations in the world. Number 1. The company building India's backbone. JSW is not simply a steel company. The group's portfolio has been constructed with a specific logic. Every major sector of India's infrastructure build-out should have a JSW presence. JSW Group's brand value rose 55% in the most recent valuation, the fastest brand appreciation of any major Indian conglomerate. JSW Group was founded in 1982 by Sajjan Jindal, the youngest son of the late industrialist O.P. Jindal, who had built a steel and power empire across India. In 4 decades, Sajjan Jindal transformed what was a single steel pipe plant in Tirunagalu, Karnataka, into a $23 billion diversified conglomerate spanning steel, energy, infrastructure, cement, sports, and B2B digital commerce. On July 27, 2026, Moody's upgraded JSW Steel rating. It is the first time the company has received such rating, showing that it now meets global investment-grade standards. JSW Steel's revenue has crossed 1.94 trillion rupees, about $22 billion US. In the first 9 months of FY26, it produced 22.65 million tons of crude steel. The wider JSW Group is expanding just as fast. JSW Infrastructure has approved a 39,000 crore rupees expansion plan to about $4.5 billion US expansion plan to increase its port capacity to 400 million tons a year. JSW Energy has announced plans to raise up to $1.11 billion US to expand its renewable energy business, with a goal of reaching 25 gigawatts of green energy capacity by 2030. JSW Cement reported a 13% increase in net sales during its December quarter. Meanwhile, JSW One Platforms, the group's B2B e-commerce business, became a $1 billion unicorn in May 2025. JSW Sports brings a dimension to the group that is unusual for an industrial conglomerate. Through the Inspire Institute of Sport, which the group established to identify and develop India's elite athletes, JSW has become the most significant private funder of Indian athletic development. It runs Bengaluru FC and Delhi Capitals. It has been named the official sports performance and lifestyle partner for Team India at the Glasgow 2026 Commonwealth Games and the 2026 Asian Games. The connection between a steel company and an Olympic track athlete is not incidental. It reflects Sajjan Jindal's stated belief that India's global ambitions in sport are inseparable from India's global ambitions in industry, and that a private company with the resources and the vision can accelerate both. Across Maharashtra, Karnataka, Goa, Tamil Nadu, and Odisha, JSW Group has touched over 35 lakh lives through JSW Foundation's community development programs, health, education, water, and skills development in the 39 districts around its industrial operations. The company that builds India's airports and metros is also the company that runs the school and the clinic in the village beside its plant. That combination, industrial scale and community depth, is not what global investors typically expect from an emerging market conglomerate. It is what they find when they look closely at JSW. Number 2. India's biggest leap into space. Skyroot Aerospace was founded in 2018 by Pawan Kumar Chandana and Parath Dhaka, both former scientists from the Indian Space Research Organization. They started with the conviction that private companies, not just government agencies, could build and launch rockets. In 2018, this was a radical idea in India. ISRO had been the sole authority over Indian space for over 50 years. The infrastructure, the expertise, the launch pads, the regulatory approvals, all sat within a single government body. No private entity had ever launched anything into orbit from Indian soil. India's decision to open the space sector to private participation in 2020, creating the In-Space Regulatory Authority, provided the legal framework that Skyroot needed. The company still had to design, build, and test an orbital launch vehicle from scratch. With a small team, private funding, and the relentless challenge of convincing investors that a startup in Hyderabad could achieve something that had only been accomplished previously by the government programs of the world's space superpowers, and more recently, by Elon Musk's SpaceX. The Vikram 1 rocket, launched on July 18, 2026, is based on the Vikram S rocket that Skyroot flew in 2022. Vikram S became the first private Indian rocket to reach space, but it was only a suborbital mission. It went into space briefly before falling back to Earth. Vikram 1 is much more advanced. Instead of simply reaching space, it is designed to place satellites into orbit. To do that, it must travel at about 7.8 kilometers per second, fast enough to keep circling the Earth instead of falling back. Reaching that speed is far more difficult. It requires more powerful engines, a stronger rocket, highly accurate navigation, and perfect stage separation. In short, building an orbital rocket is a completely different challenge from building a suborbital one. The mission was called Agaman, a Sanskrit word that means arrival. It carried commercial payloads, including a satellite for the German company Decubed, a lab-grown diamond from India's Cosmos Diamonds, and a miniature gold rocket made by artisans in Telangana. That was the real achievement. This was not just a test flight, it was a commercial mission. Customers trusted a private Indian company to launch their payloads into orbit, and Skyroot successfully delivered them. India is now the third country in the world with private orbital launch capability. The other two are established space superpowers. The United States, which has had commercial launch capability since the 1990s, and now has SpaceX, Rocket Lab, and dozens of other private launch providers. And China, which has developed its own private space sector, including land space and CAS space. The rest of the world, Europe, Russia, Japan, Israel, all conduct their launches through government agencies or government-adjacent organizations. India's private sector did it in 6 years from a regulatory framework that did not exist in 2020. Skyroot's success is part of a much bigger story. India's space economy was worth about $8.4 billion in 2023. By 2033, it is expected to grow to $44 billion. So far, 47 private space startups have received approval from In-Space, India's space regulator for private companies. The government has also launched a 1,000 crore rupees, about $115 million, venture capital fund to support the sector. Its space budget for 2026 to 27 is 13,705 crore rupees, about $1.6 billion. At the same time, India's Gaganyaan mission is preparing to send Indian astronauts into orbit. So Skyroot's launch on the 18th of July 2026 was not a one-off success. It was the result of an Indian space industry that has been growing rapidly for years. Number 3. India's next rocket revolution. Agnikul Cosmos was founded in 2017 at the IIT Madras Research Park by Srinath Ravichandran, Moin SPM, and Sri Harsha Reddy. While Skyroot focused on building a rocket that could quickly reach orbit, Agnikul took a different path. The company asked another fundamental question: how do we build a better rocket? The answer was the Agnilet engine. It is a semi-cryogenic engine that runs on liquid oxygen and aviation turbine fuel. But what makes it special is how it is made. Instead of manufacturing hundreds of separate parts and then welding or bolting them together, Agnikul 3D prints the entire engine as a single piece. Just one continuous engine, printed in one go. that had never been done before. Then on 30 May 2024, Agnikul launched a rocket powered by this engine from Dhanush, India's first private launch pad, which the company built itself at Sriharikota. The real breakthrough was not just that the engine worked, it was how it was built. By printing the engine as one piece, Agnikul removes many of those weak points. Manufacturing that once took months can now take days. Engineers can improve the design, update the digital model, print a new engine, and test it almost immediately. That means rockets can become faster to build, cheaper to manufacture, and easier to improve. If this technology continues to succeed, it could change how rockets are built around the world. The company reached another major milestone in May 2026. Agnikul successfully fired 4 Agnikul engines together for the first time. This may sound simple, but it is one of the hardest challenges in rocket engineering. Large rockets need several engines working together at exactly the same time. They must ignite together, produce equal amounts of thrust, and remain perfectly stable throughout the test. Even a small mistake can cause the entire launch to fail. Agnikul proved it could do it. That successful test brings the company much closer to launching its orbital rocket, Agniban. The business is growing just as quickly. The company raised 26.7 million US dollars in 2023, followed by another 17 million US dollars in 2025. In 2026, Tamil Nadu's Industrial Development Agency, TIDCO, also invested in the company. Today, Agnikul is valued at around 500 million US dollars and is in talks to raise another 50 to 75 million US dollars to expand production. Its upcoming Agniban rocket is designed to carry 100 to 300 kilograms of satellites into low Earth orbit, around 700 kilometers above the planet. Customers are already lining up. Many small satellite companies want launches that are faster, more flexible, and more affordable than what traditional providers can offer. Agnikul wants to serve exactly that market. Today, India's private space industry has 2 serious rocket companies, Skyroot and Agnikul. Both are building orbital launch vehicles. Both are attracting customers. But they are solving the problem in different ways. Skyroot is focused on one path. Agnikul is pushing another. That is exactly what a healthy industry looks like. Multiple companies experimenting, lowering costs, improving technology, and together helping India become one of the world's leading space economies. Number 4. India builds its own intelligence. Sarvam AI is India's answer to the world's biggest AI companies. The global artificial intelligence industry in 2026 is dominated by a handful of American companies. These companies have built the large language models that power many of the AI tools people use every day, from chatbots and coding assistants to voice assistants and document processing software. They have raised tens of billions of dollars, trained their models on huge amounts of internet data, most of it in English, and built the infrastructure that increasingly shapes how people around the world access information. For India, that creates a problem that goes far beyond cost. These AI systems work very well in English and many European languages, but India is home to hundreds of millions of people who speak Hindi, Tamil, Bengali, Telugu, Marathi, Gujarati, Kannada, Malayalam, Punjabi, and many other languages every day. Imagine an Indian farmer in Tamil Nadu asking an AI about his crops, or a small shop owner in Ahmedabad asking for help with accounting. If the AI cannot properly understand their language, their accent, or the way they naturally speak, then it is not very useful, no matter how intelligent it seems in English. That is exactly the problem Sarvam AI was created to solve. Founded in 2023 by Vivek Raghavan and Pratyush Kumar, both former researchers at AI4 Bharat at IIT Madras, the company has a clear goal: build AI that is designed for India from the ground up. Not just an American model translated into Indian languages, not simply adding a few Indian features, but AI that is trained on Indian languages, built for Indian users, and developed and governed entirely within India. Sarvam is building the complete AI stack. Its products include large language models for Indian languages, speech recognition that understands Indian accents and dialects, voice generation systems, document AI that can read Indian language documents, and enterprise AI tools built on top of these models. The company was also one of the first startups selected under the government of India's India AI mission, a program created to build India's own AI infrastructure. On June 15, 2026, Sarvam AI announced the first close of its Series B funding round, raising 234 million US dollars at a valuation of 1.5 billion US dollars. The biggest investor was HCL Tech, India's third largest IT company, which invested 150 million US dollars for just over a 10% stake. Other major investors included Bessemer Venture Partners, Khosla Ventures, and Peak F15 Partners. But the HCL Tech investment is about much more than money. HCL Tech works with some of the world's largest businesses across North America, Europe, and Asia. By investing in Sarvam AI, it is creating a direct path for Indian-built AI to reach global enterprise customers. In other words, Sarvam is not just building AI for India. It now has a powerful partner that can help take its technology to companies around the world. The timing is also important. In June 2026, the U.S. government restricted access to some of Anthropic's most advanced AI models for foreign nationals. The decision reminded many countries of an uncomfortable reality. If your most important AI systems are controlled by another country, access to them can also be controlled by that country. India's response was simple: build its own. Companies like Sarvam AI represent that strategy. The goal is not only to compete commercially, it is also to make sure that India's AI runs inside India, follows Indian laws, and cannot be switched off by decisions made somewhere else. This is bigger than artificial intelligence. It is the same strategy India is following in semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, digital payments, and space technology. Across one industry after another, India is trying to build at home what it once depended on others to provide. Number 5. The startup that beat India's own record. Krutrim, founded by Bhavish Agarwal in April 2023, became India's first AI unicorn in January 2024, just 9 months after founding, when it raised $50 million at a $1 billion valuation led by Matrix Partners India. The name means artificial in Sanskrit. The ambition was total. India's own large language model, trained on Indian languages and Indian context, running on Indian servers, eventually powered by India-designed chips. Bhavish Agarwal, who had already built Ola Cabs into India's dominant ride-hailing platform and Ola Electric into a listed EV manufacturer, was committing personal capital of 2,000 crore rupees to a vision that went beyond a product launch. He was building the argument that India's 1.4 billion people and 22 official languages deserved AI infrastructure that was not dependent on a server farm in Oregon or a policy decision in Washington. Together, Sarvam AI and Krutrim represent two different but complementary approaches to the same national priority. Sarvam is building the full-stack AI capability, foundation models, speech, document processing, enterprise applications, with the backing of HCL Tech's global enterprise distribution. Krutrim is building the compute and cloud infrastructure that any AI deployment in India, whether on Sarvam's models or anyone else's, can run on without leaving Indian jurisdiction. One builds the intelligence, the other builds the room it runs in. Both are necessary, both are Indian. Both exist because Indian entrepreneurs looked at a world where the most critical infrastructure of the 21st century was owned by a handful of American companies and decided that India would not simply accept that arrangement. Krutrim's base LLM was trained on 2 trillion tokens of multilingual data. Its consumer assistant, Kruti, launched with support for 13 Indian languages, voice-first interaction, and the ability to switch fluidly between Hindi, Tamil, Bengali, Kannada, and English the way an actual Indian conversation does, which global models built for English cannot replicate at the same quality. The model was the first Indian LLM to demonstrate this kind of genuine multilingual fluency at a consumer level. It came from building the infrastructure that powers artificial intelligence. The company deployed India's first NVIDIA GB200 supercomputer cluster, one of the most powerful AI computing systems in the world. Inside India, through Krutrim Cloud, Indian businesses can now rent this computing power whenever they need it. This is much more than another cloud service. Training modern AI models requires enormous computing power. It takes thousands of advanced AI chips working together, and building that kind of infrastructure costs hundreds of millions of dollars. Until recently, many Indian companies had to depend on foreign cloud providers to access this hardware. Krutrim gives them another option. An Indian company that wants to train its own AI models, run AI applications, or process sensitive data on some of the world's most advanced hardware can now do it through infrastructure located in India instead of relying entirely on servers overseas. That is why this matters. It is not just about faster computers. It is about giving Indian businesses more control over where their data is processed, how their AI is built, and which infrastructure they depend on. The strategy also started paying off financially. In FY 2026, Krutrim reported revenue of around 3 billion rupees, roughly 3 times higher than the previous year. The company also recorded its first annual profit, with profit margins of more than 10%. That marked an important turning point. Krutrim was no longer just a startup spending investor money while trying to compete with companies like OpenAI on AI benchmarks. Instead, it had become a profitable Indian AI infrastructure company, helping businesses that needed three things at the same time: powerful AI computing, support for Indian languages, and the ability to keep their data within India. Number 6. The lab project that became national infrastructure. Ather Energy began in a college laboratory at IIT Madras in 2013, when two engineering graduates, Tarun Mehta and Swapnil Jain, decided they wanted to build India's first smart electric scooter. What came out of that decision was a scooter unlike anything the country had seen. When Ather launched its first commercial scooter in 2018, every feature on it was a first for India's two-wheeler market. Not a first for Ather, a first for the country. This approach gave Ather a nickname it did not invent, but has consistently earned: the Apple of Indian scooters. Not because of the price, because of the philosophy. Apple designs everything itself. Ather builds the same way. The battery is designed in-house, the motor is designed in-house, the vehicle software, Ather Stack, is entirely proprietary. Even the charging network, the Ather Grid, was built by Ather because when they needed it, it simply did not exist in India. Today, the Ather Grid has over 4,300 fast charging points across more than 200 Indian cities, a piece of national infrastructure that two engineers from Madras built because the country needed it. In the third quarter of FY 2026, Ather achieved EBITDA profitability. The company's valuation reached approximately 50,000 crore rupees. The scooter driving this growth is the Rista, a family-oriented model launched in April 2024 that brought Ather to customers across the country who had not previously considered the brand. It now makes up approximately 60% of total sales. Its success reflects something deliberate: Ather's decision to expand its reach without compromising the quality and software depth that defined it from the beginning. The Rista is not a cheaper, simpler Ather. It is the same Ather philosophy at a different price point. The Zenith motorcycle platform, Ather's first entry into electric motorcycles targeting the premium segment, is in development. International operations have begun in Nepal. More markets will follow. In 2026, 4,300 charging points stand across 200 cities as proof that the best reason to build something is simply because it should exist. The common thread running through all these companies is a specific kind of ambition. The ambition not just to produce more cheaply than Western competitors, but to build things that are genuinely better, genuinely different, or genuinely necessary in ways that no competitor can easily replicate. India has, for 3 decades, been described by the global financial community as a country with enormous potential that has consistently underperformed against that potential. The description was sometimes accurate. The infrastructure was insufficient. The regulatory environment was complex. The policy continuity was uncertain. But the trajectory is no longer doubtful. The PMI numbers, the unicorn count, the defense exports, the orbital launches, the AI unicorns, the investment-grade upgrades, the port capacity, and the semiconductor fabs are all pointing in the same direction at the same time. towards an India that is becoming more technologically advanced, more self-reliant, and increasingly important to the global economy. If this gave you something to think about, share it with someone who still underestimates what India is building.